Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's Connect event, Making Your Business Work for You. Before we start with our official event this evening, I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional landowners on the land on which we hold this meeting. That's the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and future. I'm Kate Eccles. I'm the Head of Small Business here at Bankwest, and it's my pleasure to host you and our guests this evening. So thank you ever so much for joining us. I think this is now our 8th Small Business Connect event, and they seem to be growing both physically in the room here and also online. So welcome to all those who are joining us online this evening. So the Connect events are an opportunity for Bankwest to bring in industry specialists and to be able to share relevant insights and practical tips and topics. And these tips and topics are chosen by you, our audience. You'll find that you've got a survey form that you've got in your chairs, or online you'll receive one as well. And we ask you to provide information both on and feedback on the event that you attend here today, and also what you would like to get from these events in the future, as every topic that we choose is what's been selected by you, our audience, what you will find most valuable going forward. You can join the conversation this evening through hashtag BankwestConnect or hashtag Small Business for those of you on social media. And through completing those survey forms, we'll also assist our charity partner, the Royal Flying Doctor Service. I'm sure you'll agree that they do a fantastic job across WA. And for every single one of the survey forms that get completed, Bankwest will be donating $5 to that very fantastic charity. I'm really excited to be hosting tonight's event, Making Your Business Work for You, and we've got an expert panel who I'll introduce in a moment. As you can see, I am a little bit injured at the moment, so if you'll please excuse me, I'm just going to sit because they all have a fantastic intro, so please excuse me for sitting whilst I do that, and I can give a full, proper introduction for each of our 3 fantastic panellists who I will ask to join me up as I introduce them. So, and if anyone wants to know the story, so it's a really, really boring story. So the one that I've been saying around work at the moment is that I was out wingsuit flying, and whilst I was wingsuit flying, I clipped a rock and ended up in the ocean where a shark attacked me, and I ended up with this massive scar. The really worrying thing is so far 2 people have believed that I actually wingsuit fly, which if you look at me is probably highly unlikely to happen. So it's a pretty, it was a good story, wasn't it? Okay, so let's start off with the first panel member that we've got here. So I'm going to be introducing Benjamin Trinh. So Ben, if you'd like to come up and join me. I have to call him Benjamin for his mum, who might be on Facebook watching us live, but he's assured me I can call him Ben as long as I get Benjamin in there at least once. Benjamin is the founder and managing director of Life Ready Physio and Pilates. As a young graduate, Ben observed that the health industry saw really great people with really good intentions get really stuck working in their business and not actually ever achieve that quality of life and work balance that they really desired. As a consequence, they and their businesses, plus their employees and their patients, could suffer. So he set out to challenge these conventional ideas and believed it was possible to run a great health business whilst affording the owners the ability to work on their own business. So Ben started Life Ready Health Group and Life Ready Physio, I need a bit of that, just 2 months out of university with 3 staff and a vision to pursue that dream. The company then grew exponentially, doubling year on year for 3 consecutive years. Life Ready now has 19 clinics, as well as mobile and corporate services, and close to 200 staff across 2 states. Life Ready remains one of the fastest growing practices in Australia. So please join me in congratulating Ben on those fantastic accomplishments and being here with us tonight. Next, I'd like to invite to stage Helen Pow. Helen is the founder and the creative director of the Little Posy Co. Helen is a former journalist who learned floristry whilst interning at Pretty Street Botanicals in Brooklyn, New York. The Little Posy Company is a unique flower delivery business here in Perth, and I just need to point them out behind me here because they're absolutely stunning. And the company offers one style of flower bouquet each weekday, and then they deliver these bunches to around 200 suburbs in Perth. So basically they upload the flowers on their website each day, and then they take their orders through in the morning to about 12:30, and then, or if they sold out quickly, and then they deliver the posies in the afternoon. Helen started this business just under 3 years ago inside her own home, as so many small businesses start, and the business has since expanded to a warehouse to accommodate its rapid growth. It's recently located to a larger warehouse, which showcases the success of this business. We're also fortunate, as we say, to have the posies here in the room and at the front desk, as you saw there as well. So please join me in welcoming Helen. Thank you. And finally, I'd like to welcome Brian Greedy to the stage. So Brian is the owner of the Brian Greedy Business Solutions, and Brian's very practical how-to philosophy draws on over 20 years successful business experience, including accounting, marketing, and senior corporate management positions. Brian has developed a highly successful retail business from commencement to a turnover of over $8 million per annum. With his background and together with outstanding success as a consultant, Brian is here today to share his expert knowledge and advice. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
So as we go through our chat this evening, I'm sure there'll be some questions that you'll start to think of in the audience as well, or online. So please jot those down as you come through, and online you'll have the facility to be able to submit questions. And we're also able to offer you the opportunity to get those questions answered through our facilitators here in the room for those online. Okay, so we've decided to split today into 3 key topics which we thought would be able to provide the most insight. So basically how to run your business successfully when you're there and in your absence. So we're going to concentrate on planned and unplanned leave. We all like to take our planned leave, but sometimes the unplanned creeps up as well. How to set up a support structure for the future of your business, and also really critically how to make this all come alive in a business plan. So our questions to the panellists will be centred around those 3 areas. So planned and unplanned leave. In our experience, taking leave is always a difficult task, but something we all need to do, and it's really critical to make sure we have that time to rejuvenate. Even as a paid employee, I remember a senior leader once saying to me, "Kate, when do you do your best thinking? Is it here in this corporate environment?" And I thought about it, and I'm a bit of a gardener, which is why I love these beautiful flowers that Helen's provided, and I do my best thinking when I'm in the garden. So he said to me, "You should have 1 day a month when you're working in the garden," and he says, "You'll be better at doing your job from it." And I think that's a really useful insight. When we get really busy inside our own jobs, whether we're working for ourselves or not, it can become that we can't see anything because we're not in our great thinking natural habitat. So, Brian, when you're talking to companies about how to take a break or to set up their business to have that time off, what are the practical tools that you would recommend?
Well, yes. First of all, this is not easy because people always think that they're far too busy and they're far too important to have any time off. Egos get in the way sometimes. Look, I often start with a company by saying, what was your purpose of going into business? For you. And you get a response, which is make money, to be my own boss, to have a better lifestyle. And then you say, the next question is, well, how's that going? And quite often it's the lifestyle which is disappearing, the lifestyle which is difficult. And a lot of people in business see it as the end. Yet it's just a means to an end. I mean, business is there. I know we can get very excited about it and love it to death, etc. But basically it should be there to deliver something for you, for your own lifestyle. I can't see too many people when they're very old and grey and ill saying, my only regret is that I didn't spend more time in the business. Some do, and we value people by their business. We say, what do you do? Very rarely do we say, why do you do it? That's another question entirely. So from that point of view, we have a lot of small business people who have got into a routine that it's non-stop work, that they can't delegate, that they can't move it on to anyone else. They are just stuck in this. And they go through some very difficult times. If you look at the business cycle, people can do that for a couple of years. After about 2 years, there's a great sensitivity, or there's an awareness perhaps that this is perhaps not doing as well. And a lot of people leave small business after 2 years. After 5 years, if you've kept up that kind of rate, it gets very difficult, and the attrition rate out of small business after 5 years is phenomenal. And it was phenomenal when I started doing consulting in small business in the 1990s, and unfortunately, despite all my efforts, it's just about the same today. So the interesting point about this is that people should exercise choices about having some time off. There's nothing in business which isn't a choice. People say, I don't have a choice. And I'd say, well, of course you have a choice. If you got ill tomorrow, would you have a choice? Oh, well, it'd be difficult. Well, you'd have to choose to do something different. So I think it's very important that people start to consider this as part of the business. And I know this is very difficult if you're just starting out and it's a small operation, etc. But we've got to consider some major things here. For example, what's the impact on the family if you're not available for whole chunks of things? They can be very supportive for a short time, but after a while it gets to be difficult. I mean, I can remember in my first year in a retail business, the minimum that I had was all of the birthdays scheduled, the school holidays scheduled, the main events scheduled, the school sports scheduled, so I wasn't going to miss out on them. And that was about as much as I could achieve in that first 12 months, apart from the odd weekend, but we had a 7-day-a-week business pretty well in that sense. So what I'm really saying to you is this: you need to stand back, ask yourself, what's the business about? And is the business there to build a better life for you? And if you agree with that, then you start to say, how can I be creative about having some time off? How do I schedule that to have some time off? And it's a tough ask, but it's important. You see, mostly business is about problem solving for clients and innovation, if you really break it down. And the issue of being special and different. And if somebody comes to me and says, I'm going to start a business, my first question would be, what are you going to do that's special and different? Why should I remember you amongst all the rest in the business? What are you going to do that's going to create for me the possibility of creating positive gossip for you? What we want is clients with positive gossip. Now, in order to achieve that means you've got to stand back from the business. You really do need to kind of put that time out, as others have said. Put that time out so you can be creative and you can think it through and you can look for that positioning point. Because success goes to people who have positioned their business as special and different. Every day you should step outside your business saying, what am I doing that's special and different? Why am I memorable? What can I do? So, there's no easy solution to this, apart from the fact that I think you need to get very early on to the habit of scheduling some time off. And we might think a little later about how you can run the business in that time. I guess, you know, we often hear the words, are you working in the business or are you working on the business? And if you want to make money, you've got to spend time working on the business, not just in the business. And know what your priorities were or are. Yeah, I think that's really what I wanted to just put out there.
Thank you, Brian. And I think to everyone that's in the room and sitting online, you're starting to work on your business just by being here tonight and putting that in. So it's worth acknowledging that time that you put aside. So thanks ever so much for that, Brian. Helen, you've taken some planned leave. We spoke a little earlier this evening about your recent holiday in Tasmania, but I believe you've also had unplanned leave in regards to when you had your first child as well, and having a very new business. Can you talk us through how you stepped back from the business and any learnings you would like to share from that experience?
Yeah, so I guess it probably came about a little earlier than I would have anticipated in terms of how old the business was at that point. The business was probably just about 2 years old, and I had a good team of florists, but I was still there all the time, and I was going to the markets in the morning, and I was very much hands-on and managing every aspect of the business at that point. But I did have some really great loyal staff, and one in particular who I thought was really, you know, across everything in the business. I promoted her to manager, and yeah, so she took that on wholeheartedly and really just ran the show while I was away. I went back after 4 weeks in some capacity and brought Finn into the studio, and he just sort of slept in his pram and fed when he needed to be fed. So I was back as soon as I sort of could be, but the girls did such a great job. And it probably was a little bit premature if everything had gone totally to plan, but, you know, they were thrown in the deep end and they did really well.
Yep.
So
life doesn't always go according to plan, and sometimes that's when you take the best sort of gems from it.
Yeah, exactly. And actually having that time to step away made me realise that I don't necessarily need to be in charge of the day-to-day anymore. Georgia can do it. And that freed me up to step back and work more on the business and the business development and strategy and things like that.
Fantastic. So your baby was a blessing in more ways than one.
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely.
Lovely. Thanks, Helen. Ben, so 19 stores across the country, and obviously that's quite demanding for the store owners. So you're running your business, but they're kind of running it as their own little business that they're sort of got going on that they're responsible for. But I believe you have a great holiday procedure in place for making sure that senior managers take some time off that ensures they have valuable and necessary time to recoup and build that mental health and resilience. Share.
I mean, probably the word procedure could be a bit misleading. I'd probably articulate it more as a culture. And I was saying it really echoes what Helen and Brian were saying. Like, when I was just thinking about their answers, I think about when it was one clinic and it was me there. I remember just struggling to think about even taking time off. And I had a routine where I would take July off every year for my birthday to just reflect and think, and I was doing that since I was 14 years old, and I was 22, and I just thought, I can't do it this year, I've got the business. But I just felt, no, you know, I'm setting a precedent here. You know, if the business is going to dictate my life, that's going to be a precedent that I'm setting. Stuff that I'm closing, I'll leave the admin on, I'm going away, you know. And I came back and the business still existed. And and I learned a lot from that experience. You know, I really learned that I think from that stage, you know, luckily, we began to employ people who share those values. And I'd say building a good mode of leave is actually more about being intentional with building a culture and almost having that courage to, and I say courage because it's scary, to trust people. And I took on Jess, you know, my now national operations chief. And, you know, when I was away, the clinic did better than when I was there, which was a good piece of humble pie. But we took on more and more people who shared our values, and it just became almost a culture where we would almost hold each other accountable to this idea of, hey, how's your family doing? You know, is the business being too much? Take some time off. It's all right, I'll cover for you. And, you know, I guess the reality is, at the end of the day, it does take courage to do that. And to really spend time investing in the intangibles like who you're hiring. So to answer your question with policies, I say to all we call them partners, guys who run these local practices or multiple practices, the most important decision you'll make is the first person that you're going to hire, because that's the person that's going to be there to support you when you need them. And then, you know, really I'd probably say the second thing that we try to encourage a lot is involving the family and involving their better halves and their spouses as well. Why is that important in leave? Well, because they need to come into the business and see what's going on as well. If we understand that there's a family component and we weave that into the business, you know, work-life balance is a myth. There's just life. You know, and the reality is you've got to work on alignment between the two. And we really build a culture where we encourage them to talk to their spouses, their families about what the business is meaning to them, really have those hard conversations. And we do that in a formal way. We have an annual retreat every year. And I will talk to their wives or husbands and say, are you seeing enough of, you know, your better half? Because if you're not, that's a huge risk to the business, because they need you to make this business work. And we'll spend time talking about that, as well as we also do small groups. So our local owners will actually meet up in smaller groups just to discuss how they're going in business. And they start the year off by talking about their goals and what they want. But then throughout the year, the goal of the small group is that they'll hold each other accountable to that. So they might say, person X, you're working a lot more than you said. You said you were going to cut down and spend more time with the family, but last time we caught up, you've seen me doing more. What can we do? to help you. And then we obviously meet up with them as well and talk about that. So it's hard to say it's a policy. It's kind of a culture with a rigorous process that enables the cultures to sustain, is how I'd say. So I'd say for a small business, the culture starts with the people. So really don't be afraid to trust people.
Awesome. And we spoke, when we were chatting earlier, we were saying about how culture is what happens when the boss is away, and I love the way your culture ticks up when you're away. Excellent, thank you. So having a good support network, you spoke a lot there about friends and family and making sure everyone's in that together. So that's really important for all business owners. And many small businesses in Australia are actually what's often called flying solo. So it's just a sole trader, a single person on their own. And whatever form of business you are, business owners are very passionate about their business, the products or the services that they sell. But having the right support network is critical, whatever type of business you are. And part of that support network is having someone that's across your entire business. So next I'm going to be asking the panel about what steps they put in place to ensure that the quality of their service and their brand is controlled. Because at the end of the day, your name is your brand quite often, and one of the same thing when you're running your small business, and how they set up that support structure. So Brian, if I can turn to yourself first, what advice do you give to businesses around ensuring there's a key person across the entire business model, especially for those sole traders?
Yes, I think first of all there is a difference between online business and bricks and mortar or for consulting businesses, etc. Today. So, and my background is retail, so it's where I tend to go. This is not an easy issue. This is not an easy issue. I'd like to think that most small businesses today would be looking to find a mentor. If you're a sole operator, it would be fine if you could find somebody who you trusted. They don't necessarily need to know the ins and outs of your business, but just an objective view about business. They don't necessarily know the products necessarily, but somebody who you can go to with that. Or else you can seek a possible friend to assist, or family. Now families are tricky, and I've seen a lot of issues where the families get split if they're involved in the business, but it is an option. You could certainly talk to your accountant or your lawyer and see if there's anyone around who might be able to come in and assist. I was very fortunate because I had a mentor in Melbourne, and we used to spend a fair bit of time on the phone, and I could ring him and say, what's happening here, what's happening there, and he would give me some good advice, which was really excellent. You need to evaluate all the possible assistance options, and this means looking at your own network. And yes, in my time, networking was done pretty much face-to-face. It's no longer that. But I know the face-to-face network is where you actually find golden people that you may well find can be of great assistance for you down the track. One of the stoppers, as I said before to this, is that a lot of people, especially small business people with an A-type personality where they've got to be right and they don't listen very well, and none in this room incidentally, but they do exist, have this view that says no one can do it as well as I can. Without me the whole place is dead. I've got to do it all. And they just create themselves enormous problems through that. If you've got staff, then treat them as clients. I often try to get my clients these days to identify who the people are who influence your business and say, hey, they're all clients. And staff could influence your business dramatically. They need a relationship. And some companies, the larger companies, have got a kind of a charter hanging on the wall that says, these are our values, and we treat people with dignity, and we give them prompt attention, and we give them accurate information, and we're supportive for them, and we're available. And I only wished in some of the businesses that I've had some work in that was the manager saying that to the staff. It's almost as though there's two groups here. And yet people, if you ask the staff, they want exactly the same things from the manager. Yeah. So let's not dismiss staff as being unsuitable. You know, I would find that if it's getting to the stage where perhaps a staff member is a possibility. I want to take on a staff member. My principle in a fairly straightforward business, it's different with technical business, would be to hire on attitude and train on skills. Hire on attitude, train on skills. That's always worked the trick for me. And think outside the square. I also, in retail, had this view that if I had staff that came in, learnt a lot about retail, gave me really a dedicated performance for 12 months or 2 years and left, that was good. I didn't want people who came and retired in my business, despite the fact they came in every day. And that's the problem. Some people get upset and quit and leave, others quit and stay.
That's good.
So picking up on that, the other thing that I think is quite important when you're looking at trying to get some leave and finding the right person, you need to know your business cycle. Now, there's an 80-20 rule in business, which some of you may be aware of, but in my case, as a consultant, 80% of my income comes from 20% of my clients, or less. I have a range of products that I deliver into the marketplace, speeches, etc. If I've got 10 speeches, 2 will give me 80% of the business. Now, why do I have 10? I've got to have 10 to be credible, but 2 is what matters. I think this is very important as well as to where the focus goes. It could be that 80% of your income comes from 20% of your clients, or people who refer, maybe a medical person who refers in certain ways. And this is a pretty common situation. And of course, if you've got a lot of staff, well, I can guarantee this one, 80% of your problems will come from less than 20% of your staff. That's the way it is. It's everywhere in business, and you just start looking about it, and then it gives you some focus on where perhaps you should be paying attention. Just to give you a picture here, in terms of where priorities are in business, and if you're going to get someone in, they need to understand these priorities. I had a product range of 500 products, which isn't a great food range. It was a food business. I guess with a name like Brian Greedy, you've got to understand you're going to get into the food business at some stage. Prior to that, accounting, would you have gone to an accountant by the name of But I just want to make the point, 500 products to be credible, but 17 products gave me 75% of the business. That is not uncommon. How important is it to buy well, to merchandise well, to continuously work at those? And if I employed a full-time buyer, I'd be saying 5 days a week on those 17 products, Charlie Brown. Because I see so many problems in business where that doesn't work, a bit off the track. But we do need to have simple processes so that if somebody comes in, they can get a simple process and they can work it out fairly regularly, fairly easily. And I can remember being a friend of mine many years ago started a very successful fast food business here in Perth, which is still around. It's been sold several times since. He's now moved on. And I said to him, so what's going to be the success of this? And he says, it's all system, Brian. My manual, which he'd taken 6 months to write, he'd been to the States, had every single issue, how long you cooked the chips, when you threw them out, when the bell went. He said, you've got to have high standards. It's got to keep that quality level up. And he said, Brian, I reckon that I know you well enough. I could almost give you my manual and you could be managing one of my stores within 7 days. So that's the next step, is to get it up to some point where somebody could come in and help you with that. So, and finding the balance. So look, again, I'm simply saying you must do it. You must do it. For your own sanity, for your own, relationships outside of the business, you've got to find a method of getting some assistance in there. And it could be a friend, could be a lawyer, it could be even the bank, perhaps. Are you available, Nick? No. Could be helpful here.
Business.
And especially a mentor. And there's a lot of retired people who are around the place who I'm sure if you could dig them out, I don't mean that. That's very, very poorly. That's very... I take all that back. If you could dig them up. No. If you could... Find them. Yeah, that'll do. Find them. Yeah, find them. You might find that that's a pretty good relationship. Yeah. See, when you get to my age, you start thinking of that. Digging people up. No.
I think we'll move from that age of the age spectrum to Helen. And when you had your child, you spoke about, obviously, you had a manager that was inside your business, or an employee inside your business, who is now starting to look after the day-to-day running, and that was sort of a blessing in disguise from that. So you can now focus more strategically on your business. Can you describe how did you choose that person and keep your brand aligned with your vision, especially whilst you weren't there hands-on in the business?
I think we had hired Georgia as a florist, and another florist that I had, who I had hired before that, had moved away to Brisbane, so it was sort of a natural progression for her to then become sort of the more senior member of the team. And she just sort of had that drive that I really felt that she wanted to take on that extra responsibility, and sort of just really understood what we were trying to do and what the brand represented. So it was sort of a natural fit to select her. And she did a fantastic job, and she's still doing a great job. And as I said, it does allow me to take a step back from that day-to-day stuff.
So that goes back to Brian's previous comment about when you're hiring initially, looking at the full potential of somebody, not just what the skills they've necessarily got there today, but looking forward as well.
How you can develop them, for sure.
Excellent. Thank you. Ben, so your business partners, as we've discussed, they're partners, not store managers, etc. So they're an integral part of running the 19 stores that you've got, and you've recently branched into the East Coast. So what's your method to make sure that they've got the same high quality, passion, same level of service? Brian spoke about obviously a manual to make sure that there's consistency across sites. What are your tips?
Insofar as executing it, it's probably a question for the operations team. I'm realising that I don't know as much about it these days, but definitely, look, obviously building strong, rigorous processes, but I would say you can just get to a point where you just end up feeling like a checklist monkey, going through this list. There's got to be room for autonomy and innovation and that entrepreneurial spirit in your business. So we kind of almost do it as, this is our culture, this is who we are, this is what we believe, this is what are our pillars, this is what we'll lose money for, this is what's important to us. And then we reverse engineer a process that protects that, but allows some space to move in that, which is the job of our ops team. But touching on consistency, to be honest, you keep going back to this point, but it is actually just about people. It's quite hard to change people. I can't micromanage people. I can't watch people. I just have to hire good people who align with my beliefs and values and trust that they're going to do things on the ground that I would do. Because the reality is, we all run our small businesses. We know you can't even predict every problem that's going to occur in your business. We were just fitting out our store in Melbourne, and again, new problems. It's the 20th store. I've done that many fit outs, but I still had no idea what was going on, on the ground. And that's fun. It was part of the process, to be honest. That's part of why you like business, that kind of unsurety and problem solving on the ground. So I think it's that combination of getting great people. How we do it at our business is, at the beginning, we grew our business with people we knew. Just people we knew as friends. To be honest, our first 5 partners were just my mates at uni, to be honest. And I knew them. We were in the same stage of life. We were in the same stage of business. Now that it's gotten a bit bigger, that's become more challenging. And the way that we've kind of protected that is we now only promote internally. So we only open clinics with people who work in the business. That means turning away some great people, but that's okay. Our culture is more important than that. It means growing with our people, not growing with our opportunities. Because once you hit a certain scale, there's almost tons of opportunities. But if we value people, we've got to go with our people. If someone's ready, then we'll go with them. And we also have built a training pipeline where we identify future leaders in our business and we train them internally for a year on how to run a business our way, because it's different to other businesses. It's not necessarily right, it's just our culture and our way. And all that to say, I was saying earlier about trust and courage, because it does actually take courage to know that someone might handle it the way you would handle it if you weren't there. I mean, I said before, when I was away, the clinic did better than when I was there. To be honest, that's just not always the case at the beginning. But it takes courage to be comfortable with 80% at the beginning. That you delegate to someone, they're not going to do as good a job as you, but they're going to get there. But it takes courage to be okay with those mistakes, be okay with that hardship for that period of time. It's really fitting that this whole section's about support, because I would say you can't do it on your own, guys. That's what I would say. You need people. You need processes to help those people. You need courage in yourself and security in yourself to hand over trust to those people. I read a great article that talked about the fear of the business owner and almost making themselves useless a little bit. It's like, if I delegate all that stuff to them, what am I doing? But the reality is, you started a business, you're going to find things to do in the business. If you delegate that stuff, you're just going to do other things. So, so that's our kind of process in a really broad summary of how we kind of ensure that stability across stores. But one more point would be, actually I just realised, was their own peer-to-peer accountability as well. So what that means is those small groups I mentioned earlier, find businesses that share your passion, meet up with them, let them hold you accountable, ask them what they're doing. So that's what our partners do, because I can't be there at everything, but if they're meeting up with each other, 5 or 6 of them, they're going to hold each other accountable to what the expectations are of our brand and our culture. And you can create that for yourself in your small business, as well as within your team. That's what I would say.
Fantastic. Thank you. And as you say, it is about support, and no one can do it alone.
Definitely. Oh, and I'd also say there were some good organisations I joined early on as well. When it was a small business, I should actually definitely mention that, just really practically. I joined BNI early on. It's really about generating referrals. But at the time, as a young business owner, it was actually just great to meet other business owners. And we caught up for coffees and have stayed friends largely with that entire group. I'm now part of EO. There's a lot of organisations you can join that if you're proactive enough and you're passionate about, that can give you that support that you need, even if your business is not quite big enough yet to give you that.
Sometimes it's just that problem shared is a problem halved, and just talking about it often helps, doesn't it?
Definitely, I'd say.
Awesome. So talking about things and getting things out there, business planning is something that's a really important tool that can be in your toolkit and can help support your business case when you're looking for investors or future employees. So it's worth investing time to create your right business plan and your business blueprint. So we've spoken about a few critical things, such as setting up your structure and how you're going through, but actually putting pen to paper and getting it done is something that sometimes doesn't get done, first of all, because you're so passionate and so excited about just getting stuff done. It also can be really daunting, actually, especially if you haven't put a plan together or done anything like that since high school. I know from my perspective, the thought, even if you've got a template, of having to do a document like that fills me with absolute dread. So, Brian, can you tell us, what's your advice for creating an effective business plan, and why is it important?
Yes, well, I think that we all need a tractor rundown, and the business plan does achieve that. And I could just make the point here that often business plans are in the head of the small business operator. They haven't really committed them anywhere. And there's a lot of evidence to say they don't read too much. Sometimes they don't listen too well. But they have a belief that they're going to make it, and often they don't ask for help until it's too late. It's an ego issue. So we need a plan, and there's a number of these available. The one that Bankwest have on their web page is as good as any, and you can download that and it'll set you through, and it's quite an easy one to work through. I in fact had a good look at that this week. The other thing that I do when I'm suggesting for people to look at their planning in this way is I've got a form which will be in your kit or distributed later, which is called a patelic scan, and that runs through a range of issues, which I don't have here, a range of issues regarding, they all mean letters in the thing, you know, competition is the C, and environment is the E, and so on, and it's just a little kind of collection of words, and you just need to consider it from the point of what's happening in your business. Is the environment changing? Is the economy changing? Are the competitors doing things? Is the industry changing, etc. on the way through? Because business does change, and sometimes it's without of your control. And I'm just reading recently that small business in retail may be confronted with longer trading hours again, and that's very difficult for small business. You can go to Woolworths and you be the only customer there, and they've got 2 staff, including a security person, and that's what they would have had if you weren't there, I suspect. It's going to be very difficult. But, you know, consumers, we think, or we believe, want that increase. So I would do a scan, also a SWOT analysis, and some of you will be familiar with that. It's a very common marketing strategy where there's one of these in the kit for you, or one of these coming. The S stands for strengths, and you just kind of sit down and say, what are the strengths we have in the business? You've got to be realistic about this. And then what are the weaknesses? W. Where are the opportunities? And finally, where are the threats? Now, the strengths and weaknesses are generally internal in the business. The opportunities are external, and the threats are often external as well. And it's a good way of just objectively looking at a scan in order to develop a plan to overcome that. You can use, I've used that SWOT plan for products, for product ranges, for clients. Where do I want to go? Where are the strengths amongst my clients? Where are the weaknesses? Who are the ones I might want to get rid of? Because sometimes you've got to weed the garden when it comes to business as well. So I do a fair bit of work in that situation in the plan. I'm not addressing the business plan here, because the business plan is well documented and you need to follow. Just the things that I'd put into that as well. I'm also very concerned about my business, especially in retail, was the movement in customer numbers. Are they coming up? Are they going down? What's the trend and why? And also the movement in customer values. You know, what's my till take in one store? What's the till take in another store? And it used to be quite interesting, because I had a couple of 3 retail stores, and you would have a situation where sales would be down in one store, and you'd say, how come things are not doing so good? And the manager would know the answers. Oh, the parking's wrong. You've got to understand that this is an older store, therefore it doesn't get the store traffic. And I used to switch managers quite regularly, because they would create what they were used to. And I proved conclusively that you put a dud manager, or not such a good manager, into a top store, and you're going to suffer the price of that going down, the value of that going down, and the value of the other one going up. You can't run away from the fact that the front-line people in business are the ones that make an enormous difference in that sense. So I'd be looking at that. I would always set in my planning business goals for the short, medium and long term. And I always had my business for sale the day I bought it. And that's advice that I'd give anyone in this room. You should mentally have it for sale the day you buy it, the way you start it. If you have that, you're going to keep it in pristine condition. So you don't have to go backwards.
I think that's a great tip.
It's a good tip, and that always worked well for me. Now, can I just finish a little bit more here? You want some?
Yeah,
Well,
we're running a
out of
bit
time.
slight on time, and we're just going to quickly, maybe I'll throw it to you as an open question when we go to the open questions, see how we go from there, because we're just conscious of time, so I just want to make sure we get to hear from Ben and Helen.
Oh, absolutely.
Ben, with your business, a detailed plan and structure is now becoming pivotal because you've got so many stores that you've got there. So how does your business plan assist your managers and contribute to the overarching success of your high-level business goals?
So we basically divide our businesses into 3 stages. Whether this is, I haven't done evidence to study this, it's just how we've found our experience. Startup, and then profitable and mature. Mature being, which is the dream, you don't have to work in your business and you're still earning a 6-figure salary or something, Startup, it's about getting profitable. So how we do it differently for each stage. So as a startup, to be honest, I didn't have a plan when I started the business. I just went for it, and to my own detriment. I'm sure, much like, I hope I'm not alone here in that room, just lost credibility. But my whole thing is you can't steer a parked car. You start driving and the plan is the map, right? And I think we can often get into paralysis. We're just doing the same thing week in, week out. What we do for our startup guys is we just do a cash flow projection. That's it. It's about cash. Cash is king. Get cash in the door, grow your revenue. So we just do a very basic 12-month cash flow forecast, and literally opening balance, net profit, closing balance. Someone can help you build that. We have a template they can fill in, and they update it each month when we catch up. It's just how much cash are we taking? Less. Okay, that means we're going to have less cash this month. Maybe we should change our strategy. And the strategy changes week in, week out when you're a startup, because things change that fast in a startup. You might have a better than expected month and you can do more, or you might have a worse than expected month and you can do less. But the fact is, I find with most plans, they're often overwhelming. At the beginning, you just need to get through, and get cash in and know where you're at. Because I found most of the stress was just not knowing whether I was going to have cash the next week and to know whether I was going to make decisions. So that's our startup businesses. Once they're profitable, it's about efficiencies, tightening the levers of the expenses, making sure things are pretty predictable. And then mature businesses is about getting the most out of your people, your HR. So you're making sure that your staff can run the business in your absence effectively. And your income will drop, but that it's dropping to a level that you can sustain a quality of life that you're comfortable with. The second thing I'd say we do before all this is what we call personal goals. So we use a template that's been given to me through EO called Healthy, Wealthy and Wise. Basically breaks down business, personal, professional, 20 years, 5 years, 3 years, 1 year, monthly. And the point is you start with family and you go across. So you go family, this is what we want as a family. This is what in 20 years, 5, 3, 1. And this is what I want personally. And this is what I want in the business. And are those aligned? Are they getting somewhere? I find when you have personal clarity, it helps with your business plan a lot. Because otherwise the business plan is just make a lot of money or grow big. Well, how much is a lot? So we do that first, and then we do those practical steps day to day. And that helps the partners a lot because they know where they're at, they know who they want to be, they know where their business fits into their personal goals, their family goals.
Great tips there, Ben. And really that point about a business plan evolves as your business grows, definitely. I think is really key.
And actually, touching on your point regarding now where we're at. So we use something, a book I'd recommend is Vern Harnish's Scaling Up. If you're trying to grow a business really fast, basically it's a 1-page business plan. It's called a 1-page strategic plan. It's something we'd actually look at every month, because when I found I was doing 20-page business plans, I did them once, never looked at them again. It just summarizes it. And that was integral to what I've been through recently, expanding on the East Coast, taking on investors, that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Fantastic, some great tips there. And I do know that you're not alone in the room, because Helen did share earlier on as well. So Helen, you didn't start with a business plan either, and I think it's a common thing and not something to be ashamed of at all. And this is all about trying to help people see some of the values of these tools to help them get a better balance. So some people have a really strong vision, like you did, of what you wanted to achieve and complete the business plan further down the track. So you've achieved massive amounts in a very, very short time with your business without the business plan, and you're now starting to put steps into place into really sort of starting to create that business plan. Can you share a bit of that with us?
So I guess as Ben said, I agree with you can't steer a parked car. So I think rather than waiting until your business plan is absolutely perfect before getting started, you just got to start, and then I think it evolves anyway. I started my business not hugely ambitious goals, basically just to cover my income, and then it started getting successful, and I started really enjoying the business side of things and getting excited and motivated, I guess, by that success and wanting it to grow, and enjoying sort of the response that I was getting from people in Perth, and seeing how receptive they were to it, and how they thought that it was a good business idea. I guess I'm at a point now, and I think having the time off and getting that distance from the day-to-day, I've come back with more time up my sleeve to think about where I want to take the business and what this business is all about. And I've just started seeing a business coach who is helping me sort of work out what it's about and where I want to take it in the next sort of 3 to 5 years. And she is also sort of this EO plan sounds amazing. And like that, she sort of starts with family and what do you want personally, and how can the business fit with that? And are you going to have another baby soon? Like where do you want to be? And sort of previously, my plan was to sort of go all over Australia, and since having Finn, my vision has changed a bit, and that might come later, but at the moment it's about Perth and sort of putting in place all of those things that, yeah.
Fantastic. And I think we called this getting your business to work for you, but I think what I've taken away from this is business is your life and your life is your business. And a couple of things, Ben, you said your work-life balance is a myth, it's just life. And that brought that home. And Brian, you said about building a better life for you. And Helen, you've spoken about the different blessings that you've got through your business and your personal life and what happens through there. So at the end of the day, we've only got this one life. And if we've chosen to run a small business, we just want to make sure that we're providing you with the best tools and tips to be able to make the most out of that. And thank you all very much for what you've shared with us today. So it's been fantastic so far. What we'd like to do now is, we've had some great insights, but I'm sure there are some questions in the room and also online. So those online, you can post questions in the comments section that you've got on there, and they'll be read out by one of our facilitators. So we'll do our best to accommodate as many of those as possible. But first of all, I will hand over to the room. So first question from the room. We've got lots down here in the front row. So I think this lady here was first. We'll just get a mic to you, sorry.
Hi, you mentioned about getting mentors. Where would you advise finding those?
Good question.
Yes, look, these people do exist, and business coaches do exist as well. You've got to be a little careful because you want a business coach, not a life coach, in a sense. And I think there's a few that are kind of in the cross there. I think that still the Small Business Development Corporation in the city do provide good options in that direction. And that's probably where I would look for, first of all. Ideally, you want a mentor that understands your business. At one point, I needed to develop a little meat plant, and that was a brand new area for me in food. I happened to dig around to find the best accountant who understood butcher shops. And he was fantastic because you could say, well, what margin should I be getting here? On this square meterage, what turnover should I be able to get? What kind of, and it was just fantastic. I couldn't have bought that knowledge, or I couldn't have hired that knowledge but it was available. I think you've got to do a lot of networking and a lot of thinking about this, and find the time to do that. Find the time.
Fantastic. Great question, thank you. I think we've got another one in the front row and then we'll pass to the back row.
This one is to Ben. You were talking earlier about culture and how you really consider your employees, the people that are working for you, and consider their families and time off and things like that. Now, I imagine there would have been the odd one who would tend to use and run away with, with what you were offering. Now, did they end up, if that's the case, did they end up falling by the wayside? Or if you have a strong culture, did they fall into line and step up?
Yeah, I mean, my kind of thing is the culture should correct itself. I mean, the reality is, we've certainly had people, but everyone works with us, no one works for us as a company. And I think it helps that we're dealing with patients in their lives, I guess. But if someone's just abusive with leave and just taking leave all the time, the patient's going to be seen by someone. And the reality is, if you build a culture where people actually get to know each other and care about each other, it's a lot harder to be selfish when you know that your decision, when you create a process where they can see directly the impact of their decisions on their peers, the people they see day to day, week to week. That's not to say it hasn't happened. People do just leave naturally, to be honest. When they're not in line with the culture, it doesn't work. We're not perfect at hiring. But I've found most times the culture, that camaraderie with their local subsidiaries, they'll tend to see their impact. If they're taking advantage, they'll see the impact quickly on the poor admin that's working extra hours, or the poor physio or Pilates or ex-phys person that's having to take on extra shifts to cover that person's constant leave. And then it's about, for us as our local managers, having the courage to point that out to them, because sometimes it's just a blind spot. We say, look, you realise that that's affecting these people, and half the time they'll correct themselves, half the time they won't be at our company, but through their own choice. That's what we found. But I tend to try to trust. I tend to start with trust. I tend to start with that they're going to try and do the right thing, most people. Yeah.
We've just got a quick one online from Josh Blackburn. Ben, he's wondering what was the name of that business plan that you were discussing?
Which one? Don't know.
The name of the business plan you mentioned. I believe he's talking to the family business.
That one's called Healthy, Wealthy and Wise. I think if you Google that, you can find it online. I think it's a free resource. Just Google it. So my wife and I actually do that every year. In that July break I talk about, we clear our entire diary, and we start with her. She gets the first. She gets the first spots in my diary, and then work will just fill it, guys, doesn't it? If I put in date night, put in family time, put in exercise, sort of, and then work just fills up the rest. Put in volunteer work in the diary, and then work fills the rest. Hey, it's just how it is. So, yeah, but it's called Healthy, Wealthy and Wise.
Great, thank you. In the back row here.
Thank you. And to all three of you, thank you so much for sharing your insights. Ben, it's so refreshing being an older person, listening to a younger person hearing and starting business at 22. Brian, your insights have been amazing. I've taken lots of notes. And Helen, refreshing because my business is only very young as well. So my question is actually to you. Working on what Brian said, and I'm going to talk about the manager who took over when you had Finn. He actually said that hire on attitude and train on skill. Now, in your business, I'm assuming you hired probably on skill, and this person's attitude and ability has come through. Can you tell us a little bit about that manager? Because for her to, I'm assuming it's a she, but the fact that it's come through and you've actually, I think you're even a little bit surprised how well she's done.
Yeah, I would actually say no, we probably, she had done a floristry course, so she was a florist. However, we interviewed a lot of florists who were as qualified as her, and she had the right attitude, and she seemed to be the best fit for our culture that we have at Little Posy Co. So it was a combination of both. But yeah, I mean, she started off doing floristry and she just sort of shone as more responsibility sort of was thrown her way. She embraced it and excelled, and yeah, I guess I was a little surprised, but from the start, I thought that she was really switched on and had the passion for the business already. She had been following us for a long time and she was really excited about what we were doing. So I knew that she was aligned with where we were trying to go, and she would be somebody that would probably stay with us for some time and grow within the business, yeah.
Fantastic. Over on the right-hand side here.
So my partner and I, we bought a business almost 2 years ago that we run from home around a toddler and my partner's full-time job. And we've, I think, reaching that 2-year mark, and we're pretty much at breaking point of what we can do on our own. But we're quite scared and overwhelmed about the prospect of employing someone. And I was just wondering what advice you would have for us.
Well, I suppose, yeah. I think that there's the possibility of hiring a younger teenager, depending on the complexities of it all, but somebody who's looking for a little part-time job as a starting point. I know I've had a fair bit of success in my business, my training business, where manuals have to be made up and so on, and I can get people in who are 16 years of age who are quite happy to work for reasonable wages. So maybe there's an option there instead of saying, hey, I need a full-time person and so on. And in business, let's face it, there's considerably more part-time jobs around now than there ever has been before. And it's a fairly accepted thing. That would be one of the options. Just picking up, not quite on your point, but the point was raised before, I think you need to, despite the size of the business, imagine that it's a community. And does this new person fit into the community that I've got? This is what it is. If you see your business as a community, that's probably another positive way of looking at it in that sense, regardless of the size.
I can definitely speak to some advice there. As well, like echoing what Brian said, I would say be clear on what you want from this person as well. I think that we often make the mistake of just thinking, I'm burnt out, I need to hire someone. And they disappoint us because they haven't met our expectations, perhaps because we haven't clearly communicated it to them, but also because we haven't spent the time to define it ourselves, and it's hard to do when you're burnt out. I've been there, but it's worth just taking a weekend to write down your ideal candidate, what that person looks like, and then make it measurable, and then hire on, we say character before competency, but in the same vein, it's, then hire on that person that will fit that community, like Brian said. But I'd say get the because, there could be a teenager, there could be, we've found there's plenty of mums who want to work part-time, there's people out there, but it's knowing what you want and what's ideal for you, and then making that measurable and communicating that to them.
And making sure that you have a good job description so they are clear on what their role is as they step in, and then there's no confusion there from the start.
Definitely.
I think.
Yeah, that's a great question. Wish you all the very best with that as well. Thanks, guys. I think we've got one more question just over here. Lucky last, sir.
Sure. I read a profound article the other day. There was a manager at PepsiCo who said he instructed his executives to leave loudly. I challenge anybody, do a Google search right now, just the words leave loudly, and you will find this article. He meant by leave loudly, it said, when you have to go to do something, tell everybody. If you have to go to your school for an assembly, tell everybody. Set the culture that work is not everything. It's one thing, but your family is another thing. If you've got something else to do, leave loudly. Tell everybody, I'm going to my son's school for the assembly. So it's not a question, but I just wanted to share that. I just felt that a really, really powerful thing. Too often I think we think about, we've got to put in extra hours and we've got to be there to all hours of the night and we've really got to show dedication to our business. Well, this guy said no. This guy said, you can show dedication to the business by actually improving our culture in this way.
That's fantastic. Thanks ever so much for sharing that as well from the audience. Thank you. Well, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for. So thank you to everyone for being with us here today. And particular thanks again to Ben, Helen, and to Brian as well. So there's going to be some more information. So it's going to be emailed out to you. So we've got your details from registration. So you'll be receiving some information, including what Brian referenced to earlier. So again, thank you, Brian, for preparing that. That is useful tips for people to be able to take away as well. As Brian mentioned, we also do have our business plan template on our website, along with a podcast, which is just an informal chat about why a business plan is important and how it can potentially help you, who are the type of people that it's useful to share it with, etc. Because sometimes a plan on its own can be quite daunting. So the podcast is just there as a natural chat to sort of help you understand how it can be of good benefit to you. Just a quick plug and a reminder for those surveys and for yourselves online as well to complete those. It is a $5 donation that Bankwest will give to each one, and it does help us make sure we get the best possible content for future events. So if you can please join me and give me a warm welcome to our guests. So thank you once again. And we'll now exit, so thank you to all of those who are viewing online via Facebook Live. So for those in the room, Brian did mention one of the other nuggets I took from you is let's find those golden people in the room from networking. So we would like to invite you to join us for a bit of networking now. However, lucky those in the room, Bankwest recently announced its partnership with Perth Arena. As part of that sponsorship, we're able to provide customers with added benefits. So one of those benefits is for 3 lucky people here in the room. So as a thank you for attending tonight, we have 3 double passes to Cirque du Soleil and a $50 food voucher to give away. So we have placed these under 3 seats in the room. So please look under your seat. If you've got any spare seats, grab those ones that are around you. Bankwest staffers, we're going to redraw if it's one of you. We've got a lucky winner here. Congratulations, sir. Excellent. Well done. And we've got some others. Oh, we've got another one over the other side. We've got 2 gentlemen. We need a female winner. We need a bit more balance here, people. We've got a number of chairs empty at the front here. Double pass to Cirque du Soleil. It's worth getting up and having a look.